Welcome to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. Build Your Best Business focuses on the entrepreneurial journey. What does it take to successfully start, manage, grow, and eventually exit a business? I am joined again by a common guest. A common guest? A repeating guest. You're not.
Well,
there's
you
nothing
say
common
it like
about
that.
you.
Thanks.
Not common. Sorry. Repeating.
That's okay. There's
A
still
regular.
30 minutes left
A
of the
regular
show
contributor.
to make up for that.
Whitney Mendoza with Brilliant Media. We're going to talk today a little bit, I think, about that first part, which is starting a business.
Yes.
But we're going to go back, because often the people that I have, we're not talking about hey, what do I even do to get into business? We kind of go back and talk about what they did to get started. You were asking me about if I wanted to start. Are you planning on new business beyond Briller?
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. But I was just thinking, doing what I do, I listen to a lot of podcasts and
Really?
my favorite ones, I like action steps. So
Okay.
when we were talking about what are we going to talk about today, I was like, what about just like Startup 101? How do you get out there and do your thing? And part of that's funny because I hope I remember, and part of that's because I think we did a couple of things out of order, right? Because when you don't know all these things when you want to start your business, and then you're like, oh, we need to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing that people often start off with, which is not the thing they need to do, and it was funny because I was watching that, comedy. I was comedians getting coffee in cars.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Yes.
And they had the guy, and I'm the one that used to be on Parks and Rec.
I don't know that I've seen that one.
Okay. Well, he said that he would see comedians in the clubs, and they were not famous. They weren't even really good on stage, but the first thing they would go out and do is get their headshot. He's like, yeah, dude, you need a headshot. That's what's going to get you on a stage.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the equivalent of that in business is your business identity and your business card.
Interesting. Okay.
Everybody's like, I need a logo, and and you do. And those things are kind of fun. Like that's the picking the paint or whatever. And and it's easy and tangible. So once you have picked the business name and you've picked the logo and you've whatever, you feel more real. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but people spend an inordinate amount of time and money in that category.
Yeah.
So I like rearranging the office.
You like to redo your logos too.
We've only done
It's
that
a fun
once
part.
though.
Twice.
The first one I created, which I am not a graphic designer.
So fine. Yeah. I'm good. And I'm really, you guys did a lot of things right because you went out on your own with the first set of customers.
Yes. Which
So-
I recommend.
Yes.
Highly.
Yeah. It's an existing revenue stream.
Yes.
You've got some base that you can build off of. You've got something referenceable, because if you go out and you don't have any customers, you can count on 6 to 18 months to sign that first customer.
I believe it.
6 to 18 months.
Yeah.
And it really depends on the sales cycle of your business, what you're doing. And I'm primarily talking B2B. Some B2C could be sooner, but requires a lot more marketing and awareness and those kind of things.
Yeah.
But the business identity is important. Yeah, it's important to have a website. Yeah. But those are excuses that I'll often see people use. It's like, oh, we don't have our website up yet, so we can't really go out and start promoting, or we can't start doing sales until I have a business card. And people don't pay attention to that. And if that's what's really going to be the difference in whether or not you're going to make that business work, then you're already in trouble.
Right. No, exactly. That's true.
You can't sell your services. That shouldn't be. I can't tell you the number of clients I've signed who've never once visited any of my websites.
Yeah. That's true.
I have to have one, right? Can't get away without having a website, but it's not the thing. So focusing a little less on kind of the vanity part of it, which is the business identity and the logo and the website. And you'll spend a lot of money there.
Yeah.
You can spend, very little. You can spend thousands of dollars on building those things. And then that's less runway you have for kind of getting you to that first hurdle.
Right. Yeah.
So another recommendation is to have some cash.
I recommend that. I recommend that too.
Not credit cards. They can help in a pinch, but you should at least start with cash. And I followed this for years, and I've got examples of where I've done things well and where I haven't. Like one business I started, I had I knew that the business I was in, it was during one of the earlier recessions, not the 2007. And I knew that what I was doing was going to go away. It's just going to go away. And so I needed to start something new. And I'd saved up enough cash that if I basically tried to just go out and get a job, I could last for 18 months. So it covered 18 months of my kind of home expenses, right? Being able to pay my mortgage and, maybe eat a little better than ramen noodles, but not much.
Yeah.
If I started a business, I only had 6 months.
Okay.
So the decision was, am I going to go just try to find a job or am I going to start a business? And of course, being who I am, I started a business. And I got to the end of that 6-month runway and signed my first customer.
Nice.
So then the decision was, because I was out of cash, was okay, well, I now have a customer. So there is hope, the whole Jim Carrey.
Yes.
So you're saying there's a chance. So my decision at that point was, do I stay with it or not? And we ended up like pulling a home equity loan out and doing all kinds of stuff that's a little crazy. And when I sold that house, I had to write a check. Like I went to the closing and I wrote a check, but I had a functioning, running business. Now at the end of that 6 months, if I had not signed a customer, the appropriate thing to have done at that point was figure out how to either contract or something, right? It may not have been I needed to get a job. Like it seems to be the choice people make often is they'll be like, oh, I'm either going to start something or I'm going to go to work for somebody. And you can do some hybrid, right?
Yeah.
Like what is it you could sell on the side or do that could be basically a way to help move you along.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So you got to have some cash.
What do you think about the companies that are technology based? Like now that you're seeing a lot of like high investments and stuff like that.
Well, right now we're in a bubble, so there's a lot of uncertainty in that space that I would see. There's going to be consolidation.
Yeah.
It depends on if it's an East Coast or West Coast investor. And honestly, if you think you're waiting to start your business until you get investors, you again are wrong. So it's like I'll start it when somebody else invests their hard-earned money into my deal.
Right.
And it's like, no, that one investor basically wants to know that you're broke.
Yep.
Broke.
Yeah.
So you've put every dollar you have into it. You believe in it so much that, like, why would I give you the money that I've earned for you to start something if you are still sitting on some assets that could get you to the next level? And it doesn't have to be ideal. So I see a lot of that. And that's a Hollywood thing.
That's more like a movie. Pretty much,
Yeah. Or that's not a real entrepreneur. That's what I call silver spoons. People who mom and dad had some money and so.
Yeah. Okay, so talk to me about, let's say you have your business idea. When do you go file for your LLC or whatever?
Oh, you do that soon.
Okay. So how do you know?
That way you're not legitimate.
Yes.
So.
Okay, so how do you know what level that you need to, how does all that work?
That has a lot to do with what you want at the end.
Okay.
So you have to think about what either you're going to do, S Corp, C Corp, LLC, whatever you're going to do. You need to talk to an accountant and to a lawyer, and you need to understand what you plan to do with that entity. So are you going to bring on partners? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to just use it as your own bit? Like, what are you thinking? And you can always change it. They're not stuck.
Yeah.
So they can be reassigned. So you can go from one to the other if you need.
Right.
But picking something and being incorporated in some way at the beginning. And I have a lot of people who have done work for me who say they're a business, but really they're not.
Yeah.
Like it's just them, and then it's against their social security number. And there's a lot of benefit in having established a business versus it just being you personally. So there are reasons to do it. You need to do that early. That is a reason to have picked the name, but it doesn't mean you have to have like the greatest logo or the URL or any of that. But you want to do that soon.
Okay.
And it does could protect you legally too, like depending upon how you put the assets. But that conversation's about what you plan to do both today and where you plan to be tomorrow. So it has some future thought in it.
Okay.
May I ask a question? So the entrepreneur, is it made or is it born?
Nature, nurture.
Chicken or
Because that
egg?
has a lot to decide with it, right? Like it has
Yeah, well, you're
with
just
the
trying to get
risk.
into the deeper psychology. 'Cause you know
Yeah,
what
I have
think.
real important questions to ask.
Well, we can
over
answer
here.
that.
You know what
at the end
I
of the show,
think, but that I believe that it's a little bit of a combination of nature nurture, but that no entrepreneur had an easy background. No true entrepreneur did.
They've got something to prove.
Well, they've either got something to prove, someone to show that it's different. There's something in there, and I had somebody ask me a question about like hey, well, what if you lost your job later or whatever? That becomes you have to have adversity, like entrepreneurship businesses don't come out of just happiness.
Yeah.
They come out of some adversity, something that you think needs to be solved, and that solved could be for yourself, for others. Like there's got to be adversity to build it.
And a lot of people don't like survive because you say that I agree with you because people don't survive because they don't have an adversity. Like they don't have like a passion or they don't have purpose.
Well, they don't have to survive through the adversity. So if it's easy for you to give it up, which is why when people, though I do want you to have customers, I do want you to potentially have some revenue. But if you have too much of a fallback, then you're not really going to really full in, go into it. Like I had one business that did very well, and I wrote the business plan 7 years prior to starting the business because I was doing work where I was helping others start their businesses, and because I was comfortable, like they were really actually taking a greater risk than I was, right? They were raising the money and then I was there to put things in place. And so I never did my own thing until it became incredibly uncomfortable. And then I took the risk and I was like, okay, well, it's now time for me to bet on myself because I have no other bet.
Yeah.
I have no other bet.
Yeah. Can I ask a question, Isaac?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah.
Just listening. So I'm thinking, of course, in my mind, when we started our business, and so, of course, Briller Media, there are 3, what I would consider founding partners. And of course, we did an operating agreement. But we've been in business for about a year before we did that operating agreement.
Yeah.
So how important is that if you are partnering with someone maybe from like the get-go?
The more familial they are, the less important.
Okay. So we were all related. So we were kind of okay.
You were okay.
Okay.
There still can be divorces.
We
there
were
can
family.
be family that doesn't get
Yes.
along. But if you don't know the person, that operating agreement, and I've got a lawyer that I use for operating agreements, and she says something really funny about those operating agreements. And so when we get back from the commercial break,
Nice.
I'll tell you what she says
Okay, good.
an operating agreement is. But I would say that the more likely that you would not survive, the more. So like if it's just a friend that you had coffee with and you're going to start a business, you need an operating agreement immediately. If
Okay.
it's a husband or wife, maybe brother, sister, you could potentially delay on that, but you do need to put one in place. So back in just a second, I'll tell you what my friend says about operating agreements and what they really are at the end of the day. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. We're talking today about the little early stages, like before you even have a business. What do you do first? We're back in just a minute.
Eric, tell us about Laddering Works.
So Laddering Works is a company that helps other businesses in one of 2 ways.
Okay.
So your company is either growing and you're not exactly sure how to keep up. So you need to scale operations, maybe raise some money, those kind of things.
So growing too fast.
Growing too fast. Growing too fast. You got kind of structural, you walk in every day, there's a fire. You've been doing it longer than 3 years or 1,000 days, and you still feel like you can't step away from the business and take a vacation. So we help companies on that side. So sort of operational support, looking at their financing, seeing if there's a way that we can help them, get to the next level. Or you're a company that's not doing any marketing at all. So you are maybe stalled. Your business has gotten to a certain level. You make a certain amount of money every year, but you've never gotten above that. And we come in and build marketing structure. So both of them are operational at the end of the day. It's about creating a process and a way to approach it that's strategic. It's that owners don't often know how to do both of those. So they're really good at sales, which means they may need operational structure because they're out signing more customers than they know what to do with. Or they've built a beautiful product that's the best kept secret. And so they need somebody to come in and help them market that product. And so that's the kind of businesses we look for. We come in as a stopgap, and we work with a company for somewhere around 12 to 18 months typically, solve those problems for them and leave them better than we found them. And we're back. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. Today, we're talking about the early stages of a business. And when we talk about early stages, it's kind of even before you've done the first thing.
The wee bitty stages.
Yeah, the wee bitty stages. And so you were asking about operating agreements and the importance of an operating agreement. And one of the attorneys that I use to craft operating agreements, and I've had her do them for several kinds of businesses, and often it'll be two men. And so she says an operating agreement is just like a map, and men never pay attention to the map until they're lost. And then when they're lost, they're like, where is that map? And that map tells you exactly how everything's going to happen. So operating agreements are so much less about what goes on at the beginning of the business and so much more about how do we unwind this thing.
Yeah.
So they are prenuptial agreements. I mean, a business is a marriage. Your business is your kid, and the operating agreement tells you what's going to happen later when that kid, moves away, gets acquired, whatever happens. Every business has an exit. Every business has an exit.
Yeah.
And it's how do you prepare for that exit in a way that's going to be understood. And all the arguments and the problems happen, they're at the end. That's where it's a problem.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And I've had some good operating agreements that have saved me in the day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So you come up with the name and get your LLC or S Corp or
whatever. And that changes too, just even by laws. Like 1 year, maybe your accountant's like, oh, you really should do this because the tax laws are better for this. So you really need to get outside counsel. I would pay someone to tell me, hey, this is how I would structure it based on what you're doing.
Okay. So if this would be a good question kind of at the beginning, because I know we're talking about the very early stages of a startup, when do you know that it's a good time to start hiring people on? So what is, like maybe the number of clients or the amount of revenue you're bringing in? How do you know, like, okay, I've got to hire someone?
Well, and so that's a good thing to consider from the perspective of it's sort of an answer to both. So revenue, it could be that you need to bring on more people because you have too much work, but you're not charging enough.
Okay.
So determining that, hey, our rates are not enough because it takes more than one person a week to do the things that we're doing or whatever. And you do have to allow yourself time to get better at stuff. So like if it's the first time you're going through a process or thinking about something for a customer, it's going to take you longer.
Yeah.
But as you get better at it, you just realize, okay, and you build content calendars. So maybe your first content calendars took you 10 hours, right? And now they take you 2.
Right.
I'm just making that up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can't get any better than 2, right? You cannot get any better than 2.
Yeah.
So what does it cost you to hire someone to do those 2 calendars? And maybe it's going to take them 4, right? And you have to have a margin. So it's really a big calculator. Like businesses are a big old calculator, and you put in inputs, and then that starts to tell you those answers. And as an entrepreneur, you'll end up working, 80, 100, 120 hours a week.
Yes.
But eventually you have to have your life back, or you'll burn out, or you'll run out of capacity. And if you can't replicate or get rid of the things that maybe you don't do as well, and like on the flip side, I told you, you did content calendars and you got better at them. Well, finances may not be your thing, and it doesn't matter because you only do them once a month, and it's always going to take you 5 hours, but it might take an expert an hour. Right? So you want to put all that stuff in, you got to learn how to use a spreadsheet. You got to know what things cost you, what things are direct, what things are variable, and then start to look at it, and the numbers will start to tell you those things. They'll tell you whether or not you're charging enough, right? Like if it's something that takes 10 hours and you can't hire the staff to do it for the 10 hours at the rate you're charging your customers, then you need to go up on your prices, So I build, and one of the first things I understand when I'm looking at a company operationally is I build big spreadsheets that are like just inputs and variables we can play with, and starting to predict what's going to happen, just at the very base level. And that's why they used to tell you to write these business plans, right? So they tell you to write a 15-page business plan. You probably need a 2-page business plan. So front and back, like who am I selling to? What am I selling to? And then you need a really good model, like a really good 2 or 3 year model. Don't do 5 years. Like if you can look out 24 to 36 months and keep up with your cash, because cash is king. When you run out of cash, you're out of business.
Yes.
How do you, then turn around and make sure that the cash is going to be there when you need it, that kind of stuff. So the modeling spreadsheet is really important, and will answer your question. I know that's like an indirect way of saying it, but it's from business to business, right? Like it could be that you're not charging enough. It could be you're not efficient enough. You want to bring other people in as soon as possible. As soon as possible.
Yeah.
As soon as possible. Because it's going to take them time to get up to speed. And when they clear you of the things that you're doing that they could do, then you can actually grow the business, which is what your role is.
May I say something?
Yeah.
So one of the things that you have, you influenced us on Netflix to watch was Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And a lot of Breaking Bad there's a lot of lessons there because it's very replicable, which I don't, if you're, the show, it talks much about.
Best meth.
Yeah, making the best meth. I was trying to be politically not saying so, but how to make the best meth. And it's just the process. Like the next person has to make it better or keep the consistency. And I think that's where you're talking about scaling the business or growing it when you're starting. It has to be scalable, right?
It has to be scalable, and you have to that's an interesting example, because one of the problems was if somebody else knew how to make the meth, well, then what was his purpose?
Right.
And I see entrepreneurs who fight with that all the time, where there's something they do it in their mind very well or better than anybody else, and so they have a real problem giving it up to someone else. And that's a little bit about them not trusting the other people to do it as well as they do it. Little tip here, they will never, ever, ever do it the way you did it. But as long as it's acceptable and it's not wrong, you still...
What was it, 9.1? What was it? 9... What,
clarity?
Yeah, clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as it's close enough...
Hey, it's a good show, I'm just saying.
It's a little bit too much.
Close enough, then you've got to be okay with that. And you have to realize as an entrepreneur, are you making an excuse? Are you hiding out in the work and saying, oh, I can't go do that, or I can't grow the business, or I can't whatever because I've got this thing to do and nobody else knows how to do it? Probably unlikely. Like unless you went to school to be a heart surgeon or something, and you'd have to have this high education for, you can teach somebody to do what it is that you do. You can find someone to help that grow. So it's an excuse. I see entrepreneurs, that superhero complex.
And also what I've seen is that the economy has changed. Sorry. The economy has changed a lot just because I see people who like you were talking about earlier, they're just one person company. Like they're literally just, they get projects and then.
Oh yeah. Well, the gig economy concept, and it's really not gig economy. So prior to 2008, prior to social media, businesses hired individuals and then sold their services as their services. And now you find individuals who are good at something and then they sell themselves to multiple businesses. And that's what I believe is the future of work. Like you get really good at something, and then instead of going to work for a company, you provide those services to multiple companies because they may not need you full time. It allows you to fill your time in a way that you do only the things that you're really interested in, right? So that makes it a much different model than, the current, like the future. And previously you're doing mass production, and that's not what we do now. So,
yeah.
But you want to get rid of the stuff because you want to be able to do the stuff you do best. First use of time.
Yeah.
Best first use of time.
So we talked a little bit about working those 180-hour weeks. When is a good benchmark for that has to stop, right? Because you get into the business and you're all dedicated, but of course you don't start a business because you want to work like that forever.
Yeah.
So how do you know like something's not working?
So there's some benchmarks. So the first 6 months, you got something or not. 18 is where it starts to feel like it's on fire and it's working and it's actually going to sustain. So that's your second one. So you got a whole year, right? So like you got a little bit of a tendril of, oh, this is going to work. And then it's another year before you actually know it's going to scale and do what you want to do. And then at the end of 36 months, so 3 years, 1,000 days, if you still feel that you're buried in your business, you're doing something wrong.
So 3 years.
3 years, 1,000 days. 3 years of 100% dedicated to that business.
Full time. So
Full-time.
not a side hustle.
Yeah, you
Full-time.
can't have started it and the first year have done it part-time and count that as part of that first year. That doesn't count. So when you have fully dedicated, first 6 months, if you don't get business, then you've done something wrong. You need to pivot. And then after that, it should be around 18. You should start to see scale and be like, okay, this is starting to work. We're cash flow positive, whatever. But then it's around 3 years that you should see that you're above sort of the day-to-day and the weeds. And if you're still in the day-to-day and the weeds, you need to put in traction or read E-Myth or hire me or something. Like it's not meant to be insanity. Your business needs to work for you. You do not work for your business. And that is the biggest mistake that I see entrepreneurs make. They're like, oh, I work for it. Yeah, no, your business works for you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not the other way around. And we let our businesses abuse us.
Yeah. Okay, I've got another question.
They're like
for
the unruly child
Yeah.
that you're like letting scream and you're just letting them do it.
you. Yeah. Okay, I have another question for you.
Yes.
Oh, here it goes.
As a young Eric entrepreneur,
Yes.
what is one thing you know now that you wish you would have known when you started your first business?
There's so many of those things. I just think there's so much of a misunderstanding of what it is, which is why I do the podcast, because entrepreneurs have become such rock star,
Yeah.
mentality. You can never, you always need to know your numbers. You can never be too close to your numbers. Like, you've got to know your numbers. And if you watch Marcus Lemonis, The Prophet, like that's the thing that is crazy to me, is these people have built these multi-million-dollar businesses and they don't know their numbers, right?
Yeah.
They don't know what they're making or not making, because that tells you the whole story. And so I would have been closer to the numbers in some of the earlier businesses, because often the ones I did earlier were started by somebody and I was coming in to help them. I was always number two. Like, I was the right-hand guy to a CEO who'd raised some money, and I didn't know the numbers. I just knew we had these tasks. And if I'd known the numbers, that would have helped me understand what the true objectives of the business were, because that's what you're doing. Like, business is about building a calculator that generates numbers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So anyone who's afraid of understanding the money or feels like they're not comfortable with it, that's going to hold them back. So I avoided it. And in fact, one of the businesses that I started, my business partner had a finance background. So I thought he'd end up doing the finances, and I did them. And I'm glad I did, because I had to understand every dollar coming in, every dollar going out, exactly how to move the model. And when you know the numbers, you can survive a business through good times and recession periods, because when I say where the bodies are buried. So you know what you can get rid of, you know what you don't. You got to know them.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
And people avoid that because it's like accounting and a bookkeeper and blah, blah, blah. And it's not about doing taxes. Like, it's just, how does money come into your business? How does it leave it?
Right.
What impacts it? So that I'm always worried about cash. Like, I don't care about the P&Ls or the balance sheets at the beginning. When is cash in the bank and when isn't? Because if you have cash, you sleep. And when you don't have cash, you don't sleep.
Right, exactly. Because you're up praying that
Jack is going to come in.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Lord Jesus.
I had a couple of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go to lunch and you're like, and we're not going to make payroll. And you come back and we're going to make payroll. So, yeah. So, anyway, well, you've been listening to Build Your Best Business. I've been talking with Whitney Mendoza about things you need to know really before you get out there to start your business. We could probably talk about that 2 or 3 more times. So,
Yes.
till next time, what are you going to do to prepare to build your best business?